basically, RailNatter is it's a format that is a horrid hybrid of everything that I enjoy of other people's podcasts, but also with my own sort of slightly shonky, slightly like obsessed with nice. I do like nice graphics, but then you can't make the thing look too nice because then people expect it to be high quality, which is absolutely not what RailNatter is. Oh, everyone, well, good evening, everyone. It is evening. It's evening on a Wednesday in the future because this is a pre-record. Alice is here. Alice Caldwell-Kelly is here. Famous podcaster. Hi, Alice. We're gonna get right into it because we have a lot of watches to talk about. Oh my goodness. So yeah. Indeed, that's the whole point of this evening. We're going to be talking about watches. This nice little advert here that you sent through.
Railway watches. Yes.
Railway watches. And why are these two folks? Why are they comparing watches? Are they intending to share watches or buy them? We will get to why in the future. Yeah. Without further ado, the news is I'm trialing a new thing where the news happens after the intro credits. So without further ado, I know, right? I've no idea what I'm doing. Without further ado, everyone, welcome to tonight's RailNatter. And as the InCity 225 fades away, I realise that I didn't change the text of the intro credits, so I'll have to edit that in anyway in the future.
It was still a beautiful intro, and I'm taking that if you forgot to change it, that means I'm on episode 123, the taking of episode 123 by me. You are my special interest.
Yes, you are in episode 123, which I just thought was quite nice. It was entirely unplanned, but it's quite nice. Episode 123. Welcome, Alice. And indeed, let's first of all get our faces up because Alice, hi. Oh, you have a background. Where are you? Are you in a work shirt? Like
this is purely like Skype trying to compensate for my decision to wear a blue shirt in front of a blue background. So I look forward to lots of sort of like dodgy edges around my shoulders.
You're in a WeWork in Glasgow there.
That's right. Yes.
Yep. Very nice. Whereas I'm decidedly pink because it's about 30 degrees in this room.
It's warm everywhere is the thing. Like Glasgow, we're sort of spared the worst of it. It's only 30 degrees here, but the thing is that like Glaswegians like taking their shirts off and sort of broiling themselves when it gets above 14, say.
Yeah, it's tap-zaff weather.
It is truly.
I grew up in the northeast of Scotland, which is like a lot of Glaswegians were sent to the northeast of Scotland during like when new towns were being built and stuff. Yeah, as punishment, exactly. and there is a keenness for tap-zaff above about 12 or 13 degrees, 14 degrees certainly. Yeah. So yeah, that's good fun. Yeah, I was in Glasgow a few weekends, and in fact, Dean and I both looked at each other when we were like, we have to escape England for the Jubilee, and both of us, without even hesitating, said Glasgow. And so we went to Glasgow.
The one city that had nothing planned for the Jubilee. I remember one of the Scottish Tory leadership sort of posted on Twitter about how disgraceful this was, and of course got ratioed off of this. But like,
goodbye.
It's the only city that did absolutely nothing, didn't give a fuck about the Queen. Can I say fuck on your show?
Oh yeah, this is a kids show, but it allows swearing. Yeah, it's fine. No,
it's fine. Bleep me. It's fine.
No, I'll get on the bleeps. Yeah, that's it. Do you have? Can you power? Oh no, it's just through Skype, isn't it? So you don't have the power of the drops through.
I think I do. I can route drops through. I can definitely bleep myself. I don't know what's something bleepable. I think all of the leadership contestants for the Tory leadership election.
There we go. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh, I need to then in post add a little black box over the top of your mouth just to
yeah, just like blur it or something. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, Glasgow was great. We saw two Union flags. One of them was like slightly melted on a cake. The other was attached to a T-shirt of a fat Yorkshireman who was in Glasgow for some reason. So yeah, that was a strong energy. Glasgow is exactly the right place to be. And the reason, and in Glasgow, it was kind of warm in the sense that it was quite cold, but the sun was out. Everyone was outside. We were in Finniston, and just everyone was outside. Not even getting drunk particularly, but just having a nice time. Glasgow was great, actually. Loved it.
Yeah, as soon as you got into the West End during that kind of weather, like it was, I don't know, sort of hipster paradise, because Glasgow lives in sort of style terms somewhere between 15 and 60 years behind the rest of the UK, particularly London. And you know, I went for a walk in Ashton Lanes, and it looked like Shoreditch was the thing, and it was so strange, because it was like, wait a second, this cafe is saying that like good doggos are welcome. This woman is driving a Citroen 2CV with the top down. It's you know, I'm experiencing things that I thought everyone had outgrown, but seemingly not.
It's glorious. It is a glorious.
It's perfect. It's a great city.
Place. Yeah, it is a great city. Lots of love for Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
Alice, I mean, firstly, before we get stuck into the news, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So when it's a bit, firstly, this dynamic is weird because I have the pleasure of being a guest on multiple of your podcasts that you're
sure.
on.
Yeah. 2 out of 3, I think.
Only Kill James Bond that I've not been on.
I keep threatening you to do Under Siege 2, the one where Steven Seagal is on a train that gets taken over by terrorists.
I've resisted watching it. I've never seen it. I've resisted watching it because I'll watch it like fresh, like just if ever it happens, I'll watch it fresh before. And but I like having like glancedly Googled it to find out where I could possibly watch it. Mm-hmm. I saw lots of things that said it's not great, so I'm really looking forward to it.
It's really not, yeah. So either that or like the Takeo of Pelham 123 or both. Something train related.
Something train related. Yeah, exactly. So right, let us continue with adventures, by which I mean the news. Firstly, striking. I mean, we were talking about strikes last time we were on a podcast together.
That's true.
And it was the Trash Future plug for that. Go listen to that episode. It's a free one. You can go and listen to it. More strikes are happening. So we've got the RMT are striking on the 27th of this month. The ASLEF are doing 2 days of strikes, I think.
Wow.
Even earlier than that. So that's 3 days of strikes. One of those coincides with like the day before the Commonwealth Games, so that's going to be fun.
I love a strike action that, even though it may not be intended to be, appears spiteful. Genuinely, I do. That's not sarcasm. I love making things difficult for people. That's what they're for.
That's the whole point. Exactly. It's amazing how many people are like, it's incredibly disruptive. It's like, yes,
correct. It is. Pay the workers. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that ScotRail finally gave their employees the price, the wage rise that they wanted. So
because it's quite a complicated picture of strikes at the moment. Like
sure.
So ScotRail has had like problem like no Sunday working and restricted like
and those have been some great strikes too. We've had you can get a train to the concert but you can't get a train back. Yeah. We've got you can get a train back from the football but you have to leave at half time. Just tremendous work all round.
Oh man, it's quite remarkable how much it's also like just no one has talked about the fact that there have been absolutely massive disruptive strikes in Scotland for ages. No one south of the border is talking about it.
It's weird. We're like a news vacuum up here. We just sort of like disappear into the ether. We're like, you know, independent in spirit already, in the sense that no one really is paying attention.
Yeah, no one really is. So and then my union, the TSSA, sadly not me because I don't work for Network Rail, but my union has also balloted and successfully, you know, pretty strong support for strikes, apart from a couple of like, it's because of laws that Thatcher did and also weren't more in the New Labour years. Striking is really complicated now. Like the rules to make strikes happen are incredibly complicated.
It's a lot of very sort of petty provisions, like, you know, the 3 men and a dog only on a picket line, only on the second Tuesday of every third month, excepting daylight savings time, sort of thing.
Literally, yeah. And so that there's a weird bit, like some parts of the TSSA aren't going to be striking, but most of the TSSA is going to be striking within Network Rail. So the TSSA is generally like crudely, it's like white collar, whereas ASLEF is drivers and RMT is like crudely blue collar. It's not quite like that, but that's kind of roughly how it fits.
These days it's all like railway branded white collar anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. We all have the Network Rail branded gilets. Actually, I do have a BR branded. Oh, it's over here. You'll like this, Alice. Oh. So when I go to like non-day job events where I need a high vis, I wear this. And that is a BR. It's proper BR as well. This is not like fake one that I've made. This is it's so heavy and the pockets are weird. It's great. Anyway,
They really made stuff to. I've seen the sort of like really sort of like small waistcoats
oh yeah,
that VR made. I
yeah,
love those
they
things.
look like an item of sex wear because
It's
they're
sort
like
of like
so like high
half
up.
sports bra,
Yeah,
half workwear. It's very strange. It sort of terminates down the midriff. It's like a cropped safety vest.
there's an image that we've gone off on one horrendously, but such is life. Well, there's an image. The thing we're the two interrupters.
That's
What
true.
happens in a
That's true.
podcast when the two interrupters are left to their own devices?
I
There's an
don't
image.
know. Chaos.
Yeah, there's an image that I absolutely love from like a remodeling in the approaches to Waterloo, and there is a guy, an absolute beefcake, wearing. Well, basically, the only thing he is wearing is like one of those little pinny high vises, but wrapped around his midriff and
You
nothing
used
else.
to be able to get naked at work
Yeah.
on any kind of sort of manual labor environment, and we lost that as a country because of wokeness.
Yeah, the woke liberal metropolitan elite have stopped the beefcake from being able to work
Yeah.
in a third rail area with, I hasten to add, live third rail everywhere, just wearing local shorts.
It reminds me, there's this one documentary about Australian, like sort of shunting yard employees, and those guys always like fully. This is the 70s. Hair down to like middle of the back level, wearing like boots and if you're lucky shorts and basically nothing else, just hopping on and off of like moving freight cars all day.
Oh man, yeah, the days when
just like
tactical Y-fronts were acceptable workwear.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely remarkable. Yeah, good stuff. So sadly, none of that on the strikes. We're not going to be getting Mick Lynch into his tighty whities on the strike because we all have to wear, in this heat, we all have to wear full oranges. Anyway, it is on strike time, and it's and as was discussed and it's continued to be discussed in Trash Future, which everyone very useful to keep on top of things. By the way, it's good to listen. Anyway, this is escalating because we've had BA was going to strike, but actually the threat of a strike seemed to get them what they wanted. Which is good. That's the point of strikes. The strike is a threat before it even happens. It's the strike itself is often not necessary. If you threaten the strike action, that hopefully usually is enough to make things change. But the postal workers. It's spreading. It's spreading, and as we said before, the teachers and health workers are also like, I'm kind of sick of this shit. It's time to strike. So, everyone, get out there. Get striking.
The wind whispers the words "general strike," and I just go,
yeah, that would be. I mean, again, legally, I think like martial law happens if a general. But I would love it. It would be great.
Yeah, we would get into some sort of interesting states of exception in terms of the legality of these things, which is, let's. Well, I mean, cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, exactly. If 40% of workers decided we were just going to go outside and not do our job, en masse, there's only so much that anyone can do about that.
There's been a sort of interesting trend in terms of what might loosely be called military aid to the civil power, right? Where like say your health trust can't get its ambulances through its A&Es fast enough, so it like asks the army for help, and they deploy some logisticians or whatever. So much of British politics is running stuff down until the point where it collapses and then getting the army to do it. The army doesn't do it that well either.
Wasn't it? Because they've used their that's happened before with ambulances, but it happened, I think one of the first strikes, or one of the big strikes that I remember was when the fire brigade, the
Green Goddesses,
union, and the Green Goddesses were out, and it's like, those don't look capable of putting out a curry, let alone a flipping...
No, absolutely not. Because and this is the really funny thing, is that you're using the military and the army specifically to try and like, plaster over these gaps in your workforce, and you're also defunding them.
Oh man, yeah, literally defunding the police is a policy of this right-wing government, and
absolutely.
The army
so when some corporal from the Royal Logistic Corps gets to drive the trains, it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. That he'll have had loads of practice.
Lots of practice.
Everything's going to be really safe.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll test them for color blindness, because
have to do one of those green. Really long like psychometric tests they make you do. You like tell a load of signals apart from each other.
That's it. So strikes are on. In other news, the news is so much less fun when there isn't a. It's true.
I can gin that up for you.
Oh,
I
yeah, that's
think.
true.
Let me see if I.
Wait, we can.
Yeah, I literally do.
Nice, very good. Shap, this is funny because Grant Shap's Rail Natter's special boy. It's not Matt Hancock. He doesn't do parkour. He's not.
You'll have every podcast is assigned a special pet Tory.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. Grant Shapps may not do parkour. He may not have a viable love life. But he is capable
may
of
have
bringing
assumed
joy.
a series of different identities, which is same, fair enough.
He does have some form of dysphoria.
That's true.
But it's just a variety of names. Weirdly though, there was a weird Grant Shapps moment where. This is before he had to collapse wheezing out of this Tory leadership campaign.
For the 2 seconds he was in, he was briefly he got woke. He was on the right side of trans rights because he was pretty much the only candidate to go. Why are we talking about this?
This isn't even remotely important, and it's depressing that the thing he actually said wasn't particularly like supportive. It was
lukewarm. It was just why are we doing a culture war?
Which is might as well be hard Marxist for the state for the rhetoric that's coming out of everyone else. It's pretty depressing. So here we are, little +1 for little Grant Shapps there. On the opposite hand, he came out with an absolute corker on the news kind of yesterday, which was or was it yesterday, the day before? He was being interviewed and he said that he doesn't think that East-West Rail which is a line being constructed, partly finished, lots of it still not finished or even planned properly yet, between Oxford and Cambridge, right? It's kind of reinstating a line between Oxford and Cambridge, which is a reasonably sensible thing to do because most of the time you have to go into London to do that journey. So blah, 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 fine, good idea. A project which he has signed off on, incidentally. He came on the news saying that on LBC saying that he thinks it should be cancelled. It's like, mate, you signed off on this.
It's anti-Oxbridge action. We've got to keep everyone who's at an Oxford or a Cambridge college quarantined to those cities. And if they want to go between them, they can have to have a little detour through the capital.
Which was also what was also funny was it's fun to make fun of people who garble their words for sure. But particularly when it's Grant Shapps, which was that he said it would potentially save £3 million. Which is that's about that's like a quarter of a mile of railway. No, I think he might have meant 3 billion, but he said 3 million, and it was very funny because he should be more on top of this stuff. Anyway, poor old Grant Shapps. Let's put the news to one side and talk about time. There we go.
Yeah. What is time? Why do you need to know what time it is?
Yeah.
Why is that any of your business? For most of human history, people got around just fine, having like a vague idea of like, it's the sun's about that high, it's probably fine.
Yeah. Leave me alone. I don't I'm finished. I don't want to know when a thing might happen. I'm just living in the moment. Time has ruined everything, arguably.
That's true.
Yeah, and time means
I've heard
that
this argument
exist.
made. Yeah,
exactly.
As leftists, we should abolish all forms of measurement, including time. Right?
I mean, it would make my life quite difficult as a design engineer to not have the time variable in all of my design calculations. But that could also be quite fun.
You don't need it. Just design for eternity. It's fine.
That's it. Yeah. So time. Well, there are a variety of ways we can answer the question. Like, firstly, go and read David Rooney's book about time. It's very good. And it's probably quite a good companion piece to this episode. But more broadly, here's a poster, which I think is. Well, you sent me this, which is it's a very, very nice image to kind of explain time a bit. Because time results from the fact that, a variety of things, but one of them is that we're on a strange rock that's the shape of a satsuma spinning around, right?
Yeah, and that sort of, you need to think about longitude, your longitude, how far sort of east or west you are broadly. That affects what time it is. It affects your sort of relative position to the sun in the sky. And so that's why you have different times. And there weren't formal time zones for a long time. Everywhere just sort of had local time, which is established by, where's the sun? Yeah. But this proves to be a problem for any number of reasons, not least you want to organize work, you're developing sort of systems of factories, but also if you're the United States, you have, stolen, conquered, been handed, bought a huge country, which has sort of wild divergence in longitude.
Yeah, like a lot of the planet. It's an entire. I mean, it's a country. It's an entire continent that our forebears decided to go and shoot people to steal.
Sure.
And yeah, and that's a problem. It's a problem.
It is. You can solve this by fiat, right? You can say there is one time, and therefore, the time that it is in, say, New York also applies in San Francisco. And at San Francisco, the sun rises at 11 o'clock at night, right? It's just that people don't like that very much. What people like is having time zones, and so this is sort of downstream of the formalization of Greenwich Mean Time. This sort of like international project. I think it's Coordinated Universal Time, where you set a sort of a universal time zone where longitude 0 runs through the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, and then you go in like hour increments based on longitude around the globe, and you get like time zones, which we know and love.
Yeah, and you can go. It's quite fun to go to that Greenwich place. You can sort of jump either side of the dotted line, as it were.
Sure.
There's also the big time ball that falls down at the striking of the clock. There's some fun stuff there, and there's a bunch of like standard units of dimension of distance as well that are brass and really worn down because people have done sordid things to them. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. The time ball in itself is interesting because that's a naval signal, and that's going to get us to a sort of background about time and about clocks.
Yes. Ooh, nice segue. So time. So we kind of have a rough idea of what time is. So first of all, before we get to the naval stuff, we're going to jump in the kind of relative to time, to different time. We're going to jump to the clock, that clock in Bristol.
That clock
lots
that
of people are famous, are kind of familiar with. Here it is. This clock, the clock, what everyone basically knows about.
It's got too many hands.
It has too many hands. You can see there's a little hand here. I'm just John Maddening my way through this. There's a slightly bigger hand here. And then there's a third hand here that someone's cranked the transparency up on a bit. And
very strange.
Yeah, very strange. But why are there these three hands? What's going on?
Well, Greenwich time was not something that was universal. It was not something that was like readily or immediately adopted. And so a lot of towns stuck to their local time, which is in the UK different by a matter of minutes. So your Bristol time is, I think it's like 5 minutes behind. I could be wrong about this.
It's about that. I mean, this looks. Yeah, what is this? 5 to 7 maybe. It's not many. So. It's really not many, is it?
Yeah, looking at a clock with two hands on it and not being able to tell how far apart these two things are is very much sort of my level of competence here. But yeah, so it could be like as far down to like 30 seconds either way.
Those people in like Kingston who are just absolutely loving it on that slightly annoying time difference. Yeah,
for sure. But people got very used to their local time, and the thing that prompted the adoption of Greenwich Mean Time, well, I mean, ultimately it was Parliament. Like, it is the law that there is like one time zone. But
I would love someone to try and break that law. I love the idea of like, no, this is the time, damn it, I've set my watch to this, and then attempting, just like shouting at the police and saying, it's this time, you bastards.
Breaking into the sort of the atomic clock at Greenwich and nudging the atoms. But so what ends up standardizing time is two things, broadly, is factories and the railways. And we know that sort of early passenger railways had a sort of indifferent approach to time. A lot of timetables for passengers are sort of advisory rather than binding, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But it's in a railway's interest, a railway that sort of operates across the United Kingdom, to have one time so that you don't have to adjust it between places. And so for a while, these two things coexisted, and that's what this clock is. It's a clock that displays railway time, Bristol time.
There it is, railway time, and then the Bristol time, which is, I presume, the one that someone's cranked the transparency up on. It's interesting because there's a lot of So the history behind this change and the standardization of time in the UK is kind of a bit muddled, because a lot of people say it was because of the railways, but the picture is much more complicated. As you say, there are a lot of different factors at play.
Sure.
It's probably more accurate to say, well, capital is why time got standardized, right? It's like,
yes. We're before the era of Fordism, where you're trying to like improve individual efficiency, but at a certain point you need things to calculate like shift work, or office hours, rather than you need it for sort of more personal reasons, and that's sort of as large a driver of it as anything else. But
absolutely.
The railways have their part too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly from an operational perspective, good God, timetabling is complicated enough. Can you imagine doing it where you have to also account for the fact that it's 7 or whatever minutes to Bristol? And oh man,
I think the only way you could do it is like much the same way as this is done here, which is that you just have sort of a separate railway time system, and then you also work on like, incidentally, the local time is this.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, your train also happens locally to be leaving at this time, which is
exactly.
You've missed it.
Like the sort of fun fact that a pilot will give you when you're like getting up to the plane, like local time is whatever.
Exactly. So, oh my God, we're hammering through. By which I mean not hammering through at all, given how many minutes we've been recording for. That's fine. The Harrison longitude clock. So we're going to go back to naval things again, because
yes. How did this stuff arise? How do we systematize longitude in the first place? And the answer is, if sort of the development of time domestically has to do with capital, the development of time internationally has to do with capital sort of kissing cousin, war.
That's it. Murdering people, on that scale.
Yes, this is a marine chronometer. And this is designed to be a very, very accurate clock, more accurate than any that had been built before, that will enable you to derive your longitude. You sort of, instead of using your longitude to work out what time you are, you're working the other way, and you're deciding, okay, well, I have this clock, it is showing this time, therefore I am at this longitude, and you use it to navigate. And this particular example does not quite work, right? But this was a huge, like, extremely high priority for the British government for a long time.
They needed to know where their ships were so that they could shoot other people's ships and or just innocent locals.
Just so. It shaves time off of journeys too.
Yeah. More accuracy, more because it also trade, all of the machinations, the thing, the various nasty pseudo government companies that are running trade for the kind of the empire. This thing is like remarkably fragile looking. Like it looks like if you sneezed at it, it would cease functioning.
And you have to put this on a like a T clipper. You have to put this on a sailing ship.
Yeah. But famous for not being flat.
Yeah, this is something that the British government had tried to incentivize. They had a Longitude Prize, where if you could create a clock that would like allow you to determine your longitude within 1 degree or within half a degree, you would receive sort of different amounts of like a huge fortune at those times. And this guy Harrison, he was the first one to do it. He claimed his prize. He wasn't really the first to invent a longitude clock or even a practical one, but this is the one that was successfully adopted. A lot of other countries were very complacent about this sort of thing, and so there was a period of decades where British navigators had access to much more exact fixes of their longitude, and no one else did. And this is tremendously useful if you're going to do colonialism, if you're going to do war, if you're going to do oceans being battlefields. It helps a lot to be able to navigate, and so.
And this, so that was the one that was kind of less successful. This, I believe, and the Royal Greenwich Museums can shout at me if I've got this wrong. I believe this is like one of the ones that ended up being much more accurate, and like standing the test, because the previous one, as you say, wasn't quite perfect.
No.
It took quite a few iterations to perfect it, but this is an example, and this looks suspiciously like a pocket watch, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, the sort of the principles of a pocket watch in this case, sort of they lend themselves to one particular design of movement. You can fit it into a nice circular case, and even though this is a piece of highly advanced military equipment.
Yeah.
It is exactly the same pattern, right?
Yeah, I'm John Maddening the word movement in, because the movement is what is the movement of a timepiece, Alice?
So the movement is the collection of gears and springs and wheels that are moving along behind the dial of that watch. Essentially, the way this works, the way any sort of like mechanical watch works prior to the advent of the automatic movement, is you wind it up with a key or with a crown on a stem, and then that winds up a spring. It puts tension on that spring. That spring sort of unwinds at a constant rate. That's fed through a sort of an escapement that then advances a series of gears, and then those turn the individual hands.
So kind of all this gubbins, but
yes,
this is the movement. All this,
yeah, absolutely. If you sort of made that much smaller, you fit it into a sort of a circular footprint, and then you just compressed it right down. That's basically the same thing that's going on.
Yeah, it's okay. So, and this will be relevant, folks. Keep that noted in your copybooks. So
there will be a test.
There will be a test. Talking of pocket watches, well, we're going to talk about quite a few, because I went crazy on Google image search and found a lot of very nice looking pocket watches, and we are now going
perfectly understandable to do.
Yeah, we're now going to inspect them. I might even in post production add some nice gentle daytime television music behind us while we look at these. But
nice.
there's some nice watches that we're about to put up. So tell it of these various watches that we're going to put up. I think we bring this one up again later, actually. But it's a nice picture.
This is a Ball railroad specification pocket watch, and this is sort of what we're driving towards with the rest of these.
Yeah, exactly. So keep this again. Put that in your copybook.
Yeah, this is something that has to be developed, and it's developed from these things that we're going to look at.
Yes. So we've got this one here, which it says the word railway on it. This is a Hamilton Railway Special.
Yeah, got a nice safety dial on there too.
Oh yeah, it does. Oh yeah, this is all the themes that we're going to touch on safety dials momentarily as well. All the themes, all the things that I've disorderly put these pile of Google's image search. It's foreshadowing, folks. It's deliberate foreshadowing and not bad production quality. It looks nice though.
This is like nice. A sort of slightly more advanced form of the previous one.
It's like everything about this. I mean, this looks like riveting. This looks like kind of brazed riveting in the.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's just ornamental.
Oh, really? It's nice. It's nice, and the text. I mean, that kind of typeface is wild. The more I look at it, the more it's absolutely bonkers. I love it.
And this will have been enamel too. I think. Just literally like painted onto enamel.
That's lovely. So. We should have rated these out of it. We should have decided to rate these. This one is very old. So this. Market. No. Did cuts? Oh, that'll be it. Yeah. So that sounds to me like Great Western Railway, to be honest. So this is a GWR made, or certainly made for the GWR by Benety something or other and company.
This is ancient. If it winds with that key, because it must do. Because I if you look at the top above the 12 o'clock position, normally what you have on a pocket watch is a crown, a sort of a rotating piece that you can wind up.
Yeah, like this one that we saw here. This
exactly.
Here.
Yeah. But sort of that was a later invention. Before that, you had to wind any watch or clock with a little key that you just kept on you. So I think that just sort of plugs into the right hand side. Of the of the top there, and you wind it up with a key.
Oh my goodness!
Delightful. I love this big sort of handle on it.
Yeah, this is nice. This is it. I like this a lot actually. I do have a pocket watch somewhere in this that my brother bought me. It's I think. Sorry, Bryn. I think it's like a fake one. That's just like a fairly bog standard one that someone's etched GWR in a kind of a nondescript serif font.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because like a lot of sort of early railway pocket watches, and especially a lot of British ones, are workaday, right? They're tool watches certainly, but you could produce pocket watches very, very quickly by the sort of end of the 19th century. They weren't very reliable. They were very fragile too. If you dropped your watch, it was like dead.
It's gone.
But you could buy one for $1 in 1890s money, which is, more than it sounds now, but still not a huge expense.
Yeah, like maybe a week or two of salary, maybe, is that?
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, American companies were producing millions, literally millions of these. And, as antiques, they're sort of fairly, poorly regarded. They don't hold a lot of value. A lot of the time, you'll see sort of Edwardian Victorian pocket watches just being melted down because, the value of the gold in the case is higher. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, crikey. But this is nice. I like this one. I like this. This one looks like it's put some work in, which is also nice.
Yeah, definitely.
So then this one. This is also another one that, again, it's got railway written on it. This one is made by it's made by someone from Liverpool, which is nice. I see the word Liverpool, and it's got a German dude on it. Apparently, I don't know. I don't really know much about this guy other than it says there's a German dude etched onto
just
the
so
enamel.
Just in case you want to like look at a German guy.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Just carry him around with you all day.
This again. I mean, the numerals are almost impossible to read.
Very, very thin. Yes.
Very thin. But it's
very
nice.
small chapter ring, which is the ring around the outside that shows you what the minutes are.
Oh yeah. Okay. This bit here. Yeah,
I think this winds with a key also. The other thing about this is that this has a lid, right? You have to open it to look at it.
Yeah.
This is not something that you see on the first couple of watches that we looked at. In the interests of sort of legibility and practicality, that just was dispensed with relatively quickly. And so, you see these, to this day, if you can still buy a pocket watch that has these. But those are sort of civilian, if you like. There's, you want to have the affectation of like taking out your little pocket watch and,
Wait a minute, I'm going big face for this one. Let's look at this. Oh, there it is. That is nice. Yeah.
But you get to have the little sort of precise little motion of like opening it up and like closing it again. Whereas you don't want that for a watch that you're, checking a lot at work.
Yeah. If you're, for example, a signaler and you're running a railway, literally using time to make sure that trains are moving safely on that railway, you don't want to faff with
that little sort of affectation. It costs you half a second, which is
more foreshadowing, folks. Anyway. What next? Oh, there's an emerging thing, but these are all very nice. This one, again, I quite like the fact that you can see that these have been hand painted. I like that.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of artifice in these, even though they're sort of work tools.
It's got this sort of finishing on the actual casing, which is just very nice. It's care has gone into this. I mean, I say care has gone into it, but as you say, actually, it's mass produced. So it's it's interesting that they still want them to feel like they're a quality product.
Yeah, there's ornamental stuff in there, which you wouldn't necessarily expect for something that's like issued for a practical purpose.
Yep. Yeah, there it is. That's a nice one. And then this one, possibly my favorite of all of the ones we've looked at.
Oh, that's very nice. It's bold. It's very bold.
And that there's quite a vibe going on with this one. The typeface is very nice. I like that a lot. It's just
absolutely.
That's really nice. I like it. However, as previously foreshadowed,
an engineering disaster, a legitimate engineering disaster. And we have to bring some railways into this railway watch stuff by talking about time-based signaling and train orders. And why would you run a railway like this?
Oh my God.
So I'm going to need you to correct me because I don't know a fraction of what you know about this. But my understanding is until the advent of putting up actual signals, stop, go, block-based signaling, you can drive down this bit of track or you can't. The way that you ran a railway was you get to this station, someone hands you a piece of paper from a signaler that says, be at this point at this time. And, if you meet another train, you have to like pull into a siding or whatever and let them pass you or whatever. But it's all done entirely through time.
Yeah, no, that's pretty. And when we get to the end of the discussion about this particular, it shouldn't be like that. I have interesting observations to make about this in relation to super modern signaling. So we'll get to that. But yes, for a very long time, that was how trains moved around. Like last episode, I was moaning about Grant Shapps talking about Victorian signaling. Well, basically, Victorian signaling is what you just described. Like semaphore signaling and stuff appeared quite late on, relatively speaking.
Sure. I mean, we're talking about, like, if we're talking about the United States, back half of the 19th century, so 1850 through to 1900, just every few years there's some train disaster where someone's watch stops, someone's watch is off, and it kills, half a dozen people, maybe. I have a little list here, and it's literally like, an engineer's watch is 2.5 minutes slow, therefore, 2 trains collide and 4 people are killed.
Yeah, just regular stuff. It's fine.
Yes.
Table stakes, if you like.
Until 1891, April 18th, 1891 specifically, on the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway, where outside of Cleveland, Ohio, there's this train, the Toledo Express, which is heading west, and they're given orders: pull into this siding so that the fast mail train behind you can pass you. But because it's time-based, it's literally from the moment I hand you this piece of paper, you have 30 minutes to be in this siding. Otherwise, the mail train will run into the back of you. Which is all well and good. They have sort of the facility to do that. If the train breaks down, you just send the guard to walk backwards with a flag, and you just hope that gives you enough protection. But what has happened at this point is that the engineer has sort of, his watch has either wound down or he has let it sort of slip out of time, and it has lost 4.5 minutes.
Oh, dear.
Which means he thinks that he has 11.5 minutes to get to the siding. He actually has 7. And so he can't make it into the siding in time. And just as we said, this mail train runs directly into the back, kills a bunch of people. See, it's like both engineers, the fireman on the train that can't get out of the way, and 6 postal clerks. And it's absolute, as you can see, absolute sort of wreckage.
Oh yeah, these things are all just made of matchwood, and everything just disintegrates. If you want to know,
matchwood gas lamps.
Yeah, what is there is a Well, There's Your Problem podcast episode which neatly describes what happens in crashes like this. Is it the Ashtabula disaster?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god, just horror show. But that's what this sort of crash looked like, because everything was just made. It's almost if it was actively designed to form a high temperature conflagration. Fire, matchwood, all bad.
Just absolute sort of, people being crushed between objects and stuff. But so this leads the Lakeshore in Michigan to, decide that, okay, maybe we need someone to investigate this time situation. And here we have to talk about a guy with a fantastic name.
Oh.
We talk about a Cleveland-based jeweler called Webb C. Ball.
Webb C. Ball. Wow.
Webb C. Ball. His full name is Webster Clay Ball. Which maybe he didn't like the clay. But they find this guy Webb Ball, and they give him an incredible job title. They make him Chief Time Inspector.
Amazing.
And what he does is he systematizes how time should work on an American railway. I think we have some slides of sort of what his standards result in.
Yes, right. So let us do precisely that. It's interesting that. So let us jump to an American Railroad watch. Here we have. Here it is. Here is the one that we teased earlier.
Yes.
So tell us what's different about this watch compared to the other ones that we were looking at.
So it's intended to be more robust in a lot of ways.
I also have another picture there. This one here.
Of the movement. Perfect. Again, it's quite an ornamented movement. If you look at the sort of the writing on there, you can see it's a railway official standard. But so some of the things I want to draw your attention to, very big, sort of black on white, very easily readable dial.
Yeah.
which is one of the things. It has to have individual minutes demarcated. It has to have a second dial. And the other big thing is, if you notice the lever above the 1 o'clock position.
Ah, this thing here. Yeah.
Yes. So this is we're past the era of winding a watch with a key. You normally wind it with a crown, and you have to keep this wound via the crown. But you can't adjust it using the crown. It doesn't pull out, so you can adjust the time. Instead, this lever would be under one of those sort of like beautiful ornamental bezels that we saw earlier. It would be like physically put under there. You'd have to pry that off. So if you wanted to adjust the time, you had to open it up and like use this lever to do it. This watch was not intended to be adjusted just on the fly in the field by the person carrying it. It's intended to be synchronized with a master clock at a station. And one of the things that Webb Ball does is he creates this sort of like time monopoly. He creates a time service, right? As a company that will contract to your railway. It will supply watches. It will supply clocks. It will synchronize them every 2 weeks. It will service them every 6 months. The watches themselves are mostly coming out of like employees' pay. You would have to pay for this. Like if you lost it, if it was being repaired, you would have to get a loaner that would be like numbered, so you couldn't lose track of that. But so start to finish, this is something that can be sort of controlled by a time service. Some of the bigger railways had their own and did this in-house, but a lot of them just contracted to this guy Ball. And one of the things is he would design and he would source pocket watches for them. And these were, the American manufacturing industry was still sort of in its infancy when this happened. So a lot of these were initially Swiss movements, and then later on they sort of became more domestic ones. But you can see on the back of the movement, it says adjusted 5 positions.
Adjusted 5 positions. There we go. Yeah.
So a mechanical watch will like friction will act on it, and it will like tell the time slightly differently based on what position you're carrying it in, whether it's like sort of dial up, whether you're carrying it vertically, whether you're carrying it on its face. That actually has an effect on, like, a very minuscule effect, but it has an effect on the time that it tells. So this means that it has been like it's been designed to sort of remain asynchronous. It's been designed to like keep telling a consistent time regardless of what position you carry it in.
So like does a little wheel drop or something to ensure that it's just something in there to make sure that the movement actually continues.
I'm not actually sure how you accomplish this technically.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's adjusted to like a range of climates as well.
Ooh.
And there are certain sort of technological innovations that it has to have also. It has to have certain parts have to be made of steel or made of gold. It has to have this sort of like an overcoiled mainspring, which is something that had been sort of relatively recently invented in France at this time. And all of this amounted to a pocket watch that is intended to stay very accurate over very long periods of time. And to be read often, adjusted seldom. And in fact, you can take this down the line. You can synchronize like a station's clock off of this because it's giving you the correct time for that railway.
A bit like the picture that was at the start of the episode,
Absolutely.
where they had that standardization. Did you say what year was it? Did you say it was 1890?
91, yes.
91. So it's interesting that this happened in 1891 because it was 1889 that Britain Britain and Ireland as a collective had our kind of big, oh shit, we should do something about signaling and trains crashing into each other. It's quite interesting that they happened kind of disconnected, but happened about the same time. That was the Armagh Rail disaster when it was a train full of children ran away and smashed into another one and murdered lots of children, which always goes down well in Parliament.
Was the British response to that to do like block signaling?
It was, yes.
There's a point of divergence there, in that the Americans, or a lot of American railways, are like, what we have to do is we have to make time signaling work better and have less of a margin of error.
Whereas in the UK, we were like, we need to. The Armagh crash gave us lock, block, and brake. So weirdly, until 1889, not all trains had to have brakes. So
Wow.
that was good. The block is about signal block. So it's about actually having blocks that trains couldn't enter and leave. So we kind of pursued signaling that way. And then the lock was about interlocking. It was about ensuring that you had like sufficient to make sure trains couldn't enter in sections that and signaling was kind of locked together. It's lock and break. It's interesting. Interesting divergence, as you say. We must proceed. Because I'll get rid of my John Maddening and just look at this because it's a very fetch. That blue does look nice.
The hands would be like blued steel. I think this is like they're sort of specially heated very exactly. Ooh. And this became an industrialized process, but it's still these days it's something that you only get on like very expensive luxury watches. Like if you get say an IWC or something like that might have blued hands. Ooh. But it's at the time it was just something that was expected to be done. It was like, maybe it makes the hands look a bit heavier, a bit more readable, but some of it's just there for aesthetics.
Yeah. It's nice. So alluded to also in the previous selection of pocket watches was another innovation, which was the Montgomery safety numerical dial.
Yes, Alice. The dial that almost speaks the time is the way this was marketed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the idea is that you have each individual minute sort of literally that sort of have a numeral for it, so that you don't need to count up to 5 to work out which minute you're looking at. This was apparently apparently a serious concern. And again, it speaks to the sort of like, I don't know, very strange direction that American railways took, where this became extremely important that you had to be able to have a watch that you could look at and within a couple of seconds get the exact time, because that was safety critical in a way that it already wasn't in the UK.
Yeah, it is. And again, this is I think this doesn't look as good as the other one. It looks a bit more cluttered, but it is still it's still a very smart unit. And
you also see this is an attempt to do, I'm not even sure what you would call sort of the visual equivalent of ergonomics, right? But this is something that was like really in its infancy, but making something easy to read on purpose. You get sort of variations of this. There's a Canadian dial which has it has a 24-hour clock, but the inner hours for 13 through to 24 are on a little red inner dial.
Oh, nice. I couldn't find a picture of that one. I was hunting desperately. I just could not find a picture of it. But that's nice. That's
so you have a 24-hour clock already. And so and this becomes sort of very, very systematized, and like every railway in the United States and in Canada, although Canada sourced like a lot more Swiss watches, they don't really care about American made, where American railways did. But this was also a huge boon to the American watchmaking industry, which got more and more sort of advanced technically, but also got better at mass producing stuff. And it became sort of a marketing thing as well. If you want a very, very accurate watch, you can buy the same sort of railroad specification, and actually the original specification is not that extravagant, right? It's got to have some
hugely
features.
Robust. It's just...
No, it was robust for 1891, but by the time you get into the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, railroad specifications were already like sort of improving on that and increasing that until you ended up with some genuinely sort of very technically impressive watches.
What's also interesting is you talk about the kudos that comes, the marketing device of it being a railroad watch, and we might touch on this later, but all watches nowadays, or it seems a huge number of watches nowadays, are marketed based on the association with aviation, right?
Yes.
And is that from a similar sort of thing? Is that because aviation watches had to do a similar thing? And is that what's the connection with that?
It's definitely the case, and you see a lot of the same imperatives. I was actually just looking at because I'm like this. I was just looking at U.S. Army Air Force's Master Navigational Chronograph, they called it, which is literally, it's a pocket watch. It's a pocket watch with a black dial and white hands and white numerals. But for much the same reasons as our original longitude clock, if you're navigating an aircraft, you can navigate an aircraft using a pocket watch and like looking at the stars. Like even World War II bombers had a star viewing dome for the navigators, so you could stick your head up and you could like, apply a sextant
Yeah,
in
yeah.
flight in a
They had
Lancaster
sextants
bomber.
in. Yeah, they had sextant. The
Yeah,
RAF had Bomber Command had sextants in aircraft.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, weird, but also
Yeah.
kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah. So yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely. Aviation is like something that's at one point you needed a very, very accurate clock. Now probably not so much, but also some of it's just a case of pilots like expensive shiny things.
Also that, yeah, and pilots look cool, and so
That's
they
true.
sell stuff.
Yeah.
That's also a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, go on.
No, this is good because it leads me into my next thing, which is the sort of the demise and curious afterlife of the pocket watch.
Yeah.
It at no point during the late 19th, early 20th century, the late 19th century, was a wristwatch considered suitable for railway use. Because a wristwatch is for women. It's small. It's very delicate. It's jewelry first.
I didn't realize that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it was genuinely felt like if you look at the movement of a pocket watch and the movement of a wristwatch, a pocket watch is like it's something that they recommend to people who want to learn watchmaking is to start on pocket watches because everything is much bigger
Mm.
and everything is much more robust. In a wristwatch to fit it onto the wrist, it has to be miniaturized, and so it was felt that these were very delicate things.
And as we all know, women are delicate.
That's right. That's right.
Science, right?
Yeah, and what changed that was the First World War. You saw wristwatches
Okay.
being because of the convenience of not having to get a pocket watch out from under a greatcoat. The first wristwatches for men were marketed as trench watches. And
Interesting. Okay.
it's something for officers. It's something that your commissioned officer has to know what time to go over the top and walk into the machine gun fire.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you might even see like a converted pocket watch case that's just had lugs welded onto it to put a strap through them.
Yes.
And
So this is all that makes so much sense that because yeah, before that
Hmm.
point, I kind of unconscious, without even thinking about it, before the
Sure.
First World War, pocket watches are the thing you often see. You often see it as
Yeah,
a form of
absolutely.
dress. You don't men through the war, through the kind of the interwar years, watches start becoming. That's yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And they sort of like prove that they can be reliable enough and durable enough that even men can wear a wristwatch.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that the thing that we all know and love about the railways is that they're occasionally prone to how can I put this delicately? Hostility to innovation.
Yeah.
So where if say take your example again, if you see a fictional character, after the First World War or even after the Second World War, wearing a pocket watch, the sort of impression that conveys is traditionalist, a bit fusty maybe, set in his ways, older. Well, railways, particularly in the US, absolutely kept by this. You would not approve a wristwatch for use on a railway because it was sort of like it was just the done thing now that if you were a railway guard, if you're a railway engineer, you have a pocket watch, and it comes from this sort of like approved process. And this doesn't change until the 1960s,
Grief.
as strange as that sounds, and that's where Ball once again the company it was still owned by Webb C. Ball's family until the 80s. Now it's owned by like Swiss venture capitalists, I think.
Oh, boo.
Fate of all things, you know.
Quite. The Ball Trainmaster. I'll tell you
Ball
what.
Trainmaster.
What does this thing look like? Well, here's an advert for it, which is
Looks
quite interesting.
incredible. Be modern.
I know, right? Look at this.
The Ball Trainmaster wristwatch. And they made millions of these things, but it's strange that it took them this long. And even then, it wasn't universal. That this was just an option that you could get out of your own salary, I might add.
Oh, it's always out of the always out of the own
absolutely.
salary. Yeah. It's interesting. So they've got the person in the background here with the pocket watch still. They are, and then this person is being modern.
That's right.
Being modern. You've now made me think. There is a book behind me. And you've made me think, it'll probably take me too long to sift through the pages, but you've made me think what the British Rail Corporate Identity Manual, because it has a picture of the uniform in it. I wonder if it shows a pocket watch or a
I wonder.
Ooh.
Interesting. Something to put in post, maybe.
I'll put it in post. I'll tweet. I'll have a look through and I'll tweet you the image to see if there's an obvious timepiece within the. But that's quite interesting. Anyway, this advert is great, and it's advertising what is, let's face it, quite a fetching.
It's very nice.
Timepiece.
It is very nice,
and it's still got this ball official standard. It's still got this this sort of little crest in it. It's nice.
So they've gone back to Swiss made. There's some more sort of technical things that have come in, like when they started using diesel locomotives. You know, your watch has all the components have to be like anti-magnetic, so it's not thrown off by the locomotive. But yeah, no, absolutely. This is and they made these through to at least the 70s. The case shape changed. They had this sort of very 70s cushion case where it was like flat around the edges, like it had been squished. But yeah, this sort of, by this point, this had become less and less important because obviously the Americans had developed their own block signaling at this point. But a lot of these regulations and a lot of even the timekeeping services just sort of kept on. Even as the drive became more about sort of precision in terms of passenger timetables rather than signaling, a lot of these just sort of held on institutionally, and that's the thing I always like. I always get really interested in big institutions where you just, these niches get carved out and then they just stay there.
Yeah, they just stay. Absolutely, and we'll come on when we get to the end. We'll come back to this, and we'll come back to signaling and time, because I think it might be interesting to sort of look back at the way that time is critical. But yeah, this it is a nice watch. It's my kind of watch as well, actually, because I quite like a small, neat little petite little watch.
Definitely.
That is my kind of favorite style, and this one is nice. Again, I like the typeface as well. It's quite, that 4 is. It's got.
That's very striking.
It's very nice, indeed. Now, by contrast,
yes, we have to go across the Atlantic, and we have to say that the railroad watch, largely an American or at least North American phenomenon.
Yeah.
Honestly, partly because British Railways developed block signaling and adopted it much earlier, it became much less important. And so, you'll see pocket watches engraved with like GWR or, London and Midlands or whatever, but they're sort of just ordinary off the shelf. There's nothing special about them. They're just, resolutely ordinary commercial watches. And so as we go through into modernity and we get into internationalization, we have to talk about the watches that British Rail issued. And one interesting fact about this is that for a long time, trained drivers in the United Kingdom were not issued a watch. The position of the railway and even British Rail was, you don't need one. The guard needs one. It's a passenger convenience.
Yes, but it's not relevant to the operation of the actual railway, which I suppose is true.
If anything, it's a distraction. Yeah. I got deep into the research for this, and I found some forum thread somewhere. Right. I have no idea if this is true, but the story is that British Rail finally got persuaded to start issuing drivers watches because if you were late enough driving a British Rail train, you had to fill in a little sort of like explain yourself slip, right? Which had a field for time arrived, and drivers kept writing in, guard has the watch, ask him. Which I don't know if that's true, but I like that story a great deal.
Whether it's apocryphal or not, that is a typical sort of story that sounds very familiar. I like that.
It's something you would hear told, yes.
Yeah, precisely. And so, what of this British Rail Timex? Was this a fine watch? Well, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah.
It's easy to read, I guess.
It's just absolutely basic. Yeah.
I was shocked by this because I expected to find at the very least like a little bit of British Rail branding on the dial or something.
That would look nice. If it had a little double arrow here, that would be nice. But
fine.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Apparently, before this, they used the British company Smiths. You'll see occasionally for sale, like if you got the gold watch for like 30 years of service or whatever, that was like a gold Smith's watch. But then, by the time we get into the 60s, quartz comes in and you get much, much more accurate quartz watches. Like a mechanical watch, you might lose, a second a day. So that's not unusual. A quartz watch, you're losing like a second a month. It's like literally Yeah, it's an order of magnitude of difference in accuracy. And so, the railways adopt these. Of course, we know British Rail very, very good at sticking to its timetables, so it really needed that sort of like precision second.
Oh yeah, glorious. And it's
Hmm.
just a Timex. It's just a
Just a
regular
Timex.
Timex.
I,
Yeah.
I I heard another story in same forum thread. So, I literally just went to old railway employees telling stories .com or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
which is that when the guards got issued these new quartz watches, for a while at King's Cross, they would just instantly sell them, claim they'd lost them, get issued a new one, and just sort of, it's a few quid each time, but you get some money out of British Rail doing this.
Yeah, yeah, it pays for a couple of lunches. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Crikey. The thing is, I quite like this actually. The quartz,
It's
the
not
weird
bad.
C thing, this little like wave thing under the quartz is a bit naff. If they got rid of
Yeah.
that, this would look even nicer. It's
It's
actually
not bad.
quite nice. I quite like it.
Yeah.
It's it's
And
simple.
it's
I'm a
yeah.
simple
It's
guy. What can I say?
it's all you need. And the American railroads in particular that I've looked at that still have watch specifications, the standards have gotten looser rather than tighter because they're not as important.
Yeah,
So like Union Pacific, all they say is you have to have a watch has to be accurate to within 30 seconds, which is nothing. You barely even have to look at it.
yeah,
You have a clock in the cab anyway, if you need it, which you don't.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and so much the same with this. It's just there. It's a passenger convenience. It's not even much of a convenience. And it's just so there's this real cultural difference in that I don't think anyone in British Rail or any of its successors or even necessarily predecessors really just cared that much. They didn't really have any reason to. It's a watch. It tells the time. It's totally
Yeah,
unsentimental.
yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, they were all. If you had a sentimental timepiece, it would be, for, as you say, like your years of service watch. You
Yeah,
might get
exactly.
a nice, but in terms of the functionality of the railway, less so. I wonder to what extent that's related to signaling and related to as you kind of alluded to earlier, the way that signaling worked in the UK and Europe. Actually, it's interesting. So we go from the British Rail Timex as it is, Indiglo, lovely, to
Yanked into modernity.
yanked into modernity with a watch that I'm gonna just well, in fact, I jump. So the Mundane Swiss Railway watch.
Hmm.
Well, here is a slightly not as nice resolution image than I thought it was, and but
Still
also
nice.
it's this thing. As
Yes,
recommended by you for me to the thing that instigated this entire thing. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
nice. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm holding it upside down because I can't twist my arm. That doesn't work like that. But yeah, there it is. It's nice. It's a nice watch.
Yeah.
It's
And
I
it's
can't get it to focus, but there we are. There it is. It's
it,
nice.
it it's an interesting sort of moment in so the Swiss Railways. I think is it SFF or CFF, whatever. Anyway,
It's three. It's FFS, it's CFF, and it's SBB. It's the
yeah,
whole works because they're greedy.
it didn't even get one in Romanche. Disgusting.
Vile.
So they went to the watchmaker Mundane and said essentially do all of our time in much the same way as the Lakeshore and Southern went to Webb Ball. But this is for a sort of a again it's a passenger convenience. All the clocks in Swiss railway stations look like this. They have this weird feature, some of them, where it holds over on the 60-second mark for 1 second and then jumps to 1.
Which I don't think mine does that because I've been looking at it, but then I can never be sure whether, because for me, time, whether it's ADHD or whatever it is, time looks like this. I'm looking at this thing and it's warping slower and faster anyway.
Certainly.
So
Yeah, the second you look at a watch face, it jumps all over the place.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, that's purely an affectation. No matter how strict Switzerland thinks it may or may not be with its timetables, it's a branding exercise first and foremost, and it's a branding exercise that allows Mundane to then go and sell this watch, which is a very nice watch. Like, you're not getting robbed off of this, but it allows them to go and say, buy this Swiss watch, Swiss precision. It's precise like the trains. They both run on time.
Yeah, exactly. And it means I have a watch with a railway company logo in it, which
Exactly.
makes me, an idiot, quite happy.
Yeah. You can buy a Ball watch now, but as we said, in the 80s, it was taken over by venture capitalists. The original, like, they'll make you a watch. They use a lot of tritium still in a safe way, so that your watch, like most modern watches, use luminova, which glows in the dark, but they use tritium, which like doesn't require exposure to sunlight, which is very nice. They have like a sort of rainbow.
Yeah, I mean it's mildly radioactive, but also in a way that that's not too harmful.
Yes, very, very expensive. And this is the thing that I'm getting at, is that albeit pitched at different levels, both the Mundane watch and your modern ball watch are luxury goods.
Yeah.
It's something that you buy because you deserve a treat, you want to feel nice, you want to look at something nice. But it is, the function follows the form rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And this is, I would argue, this is a success story, right? You don't need a very precise instrument to calculate whether or not a mail train is going to run into the back of your train anymore. Because we have like advanced safety systems to the point where it can just be a stylistic thing. It can just be a fashion thing. It can just be something on the passenger side, which I've been sort of deriding a little bit, but perhaps I shouldn't be, because it's nice to have a nice experience as a passenger on a railway. It's nice to be able to look at a clock in a railway station and think, oh, some care has gone into that. Someone has like designed this for me to look at.
Yeah, and we've not even touched on physical clocks. I think it's a topic for another day. But in terms of watches, you're right. That is a nice arc in terms of the fact that they've become a luxury good is certainly from a railway perspective. It's nice that we've moved on to the point where safety does not rely on this one fallible device.
Absolutely.
But we are not finished yet, because
one more thing.
There is one more thing to talk about, and this is I have titled this small chapter "An Opportunity for Greatness."
That's right, a small soliloquy.
Absolutely.
If anyone is out there who owns the intellectual property of a much benighted, much abused little company called Network Southeast.
Here it is. Here is their
with
timepiece. Oh.
The pigeon spikes on the top.
Yeah, that's a necessary feature.
There are still like 2 of these in operation at, I want to say, Cannon Street.
I think yes, I saw them for the first time. For the first time I've ever used this station, Cannon Street. And I used it last weekend. All the time I've been in London, I've never needed to use that station. But I ended up going from London Bridge to Cannon Street and saw these and was like, ooh, these are nice. I like
beautiful these. Digital flap clock, like the big destination boards.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they ripped all of these off the entire Network Southeast estate. At the end of it being Network Southeast, I think sometime in the 90s. Apart from these 2, I don't know why they kept them. But to me,
because Tim Dunn, friend of the show, often posts the 2 and the 2 of them there next to each other with kind of a nice shot, and they are iconic and
they're beautiful.
A little rare. Nice.
It's the thing. I think they convey sort of a very British dismalness. I think they're beautiful in a way that only a British person could love.
Yeah.
I feel very strongly about them because they were still ubiquitous when I was very young and I was just starting to get trains and I was commuting into school by train. And their replacements, sort of orange and black LEDs, not going to inspire anyone. But this hideous, boxy, sort of this red phone box color thing with the like Network Southeast toothpaste colors underneath. I find it very compelling aesthetically. And so I think our modest proposal is let me buy a miniature version of one of these. Let me get a little alarm clock. Let me get a watch, anything. I'm begging you. What do I have to do to get one of these things?
Have it. Just having that dimension but on your wrist could be kind of cool. It could work quite nicely.
Sort of rectangular. Because the thing is, I occasionally for a while they did do estate sales, estate auctions. And I was like, do you want to buy, an exit sign from a station for 250 quid, which no, not really. But occasionally they would have one of these clocks and, expensive as they were, having no way of powering it as I did, filthy as they would have been. And also the scale is different. Like you see it on the ceiling of a railway station, you don't realize this thing's about 10 feet wide. Or whatever.
It's huge,
Even so, every time I was so tempted to get one of these. I don't know what I would have done with it, but
It would have pulled down any wall you hung it on. It would have pulled down.
Without those like massive sort of brackets attaching it to something.
That WeWork that you're sat in right now, it would have pulled those windows right down. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But I I think there's a gap in the market, and whoever it is that has come to own Network Southeast's intellectual property rights is sleeping on this. They're leaving money on the table.
Absolutely. People would lap this up. I wonder who. I actually don't know who. I think it might still just be DFT, just wallowing around in the DFT.
Grant Shapps, if you're listening, we're sorry we made fun of you. We'll forgive you for like all of your trespasses if you either like release this IP to whoever wants it, or give me a fucking government issue,
government issue
alarm clock watch,
Absolutely. Well, with this behind us, my kind of closing thoughts, and this is hopefully an interesting little tidbit for you, which is we talk about the fact that time-based signaling is sort of in the past. Well, in a way, it isn't. In a way, we're moving back towards that now with signaling because. No. Well, yes and no. So in two ways. So some signaling is based on GPS now. Now, the whole architecture of GPS relies on very, very, very accurate timekeeping.
That's true.
So in a way, the most accurate clock we can possibly make is now responsible for not all, but a few rail operations, relying on GPS. Mm-hmm. But the other thing...
Oh, is this the, like, rolling block thing?
Yes, so moving block signaling, which is a thing that's been around for ages. We've had moving block signaling even in the UK for quite a while now. The Victorian line essentially operated using it. But we are now rolling it out in more, kind of more eagerly onto the main line. The East Coast main line will be the first bit of network to see this properly happening over the next few years. We've already been trialling on bits. But that essentially relies on time. Yes, it's relying on much more complicated calculations of train speed, and that blocks kind of gets bigger as the train goes faster and slower as it gets smaller as the train gets slower. But that is really relying on time. It's about time. It's kind of elapsed time between trains. So we're going back. We are returning to the past.
I really hope that. Well, I mean, now we're sort of betting everything against the Kessler syndrome, right? If this is GPS based. So,
thankfully, most of it is. I think a lot of the ETCS systems do rely on sort of belises and positioning, but actually, a lot of it still, is GPS and timing. So. Yeah, let's hope that, or is it going to be Britain's own
Space Force?
Brexit? Yeah, this is it. Space Force is going to lock us out of GPS. So are we going to be relying on and we're not going to be allowed into whatever the European one is? So is it going to be the British version of GPS the British version of GPS that we have to launch to get the trains moving?
So join the Russian GLONASS system just to really fuck things up.
Just really, really to put everyone on edge. Alice, that's been brilliant. Thanks so much. I'm going
my pleasure.
I go big face before we do the closing remarks. That's been really good. Thanks for that. It was
my pleasure. Seriously,
I was not sure. Well, I knew it was going to be fun. I can't believe I hadn't thought that you're a lady who cares a lot about watches. That's
sure. Perhaps too much.
It is known, and also you. We both share a love, if not like a slightly sort of sardonic love of railways, because they're a strange and wonderful realm. So this was a match made in heaven. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, a little like a divergence into, what do you even call this? Ferroequinohorology. Right.
Yes.
Iron horse clock studies.
Ferroequinology, but ferroequinohorology. I like that a lot. That shall be. I should change your little thing down here to ferro.
I'll get some business cards made up. Ferroequinohorologist.
That's it. Smashing. Right. So it only remains really for me to firstly get rid of our faces and remember how to actually run my own podcast. This is available in audio only format for those who don't want to see anything, then you can listen to this. I have no idea how well this worked in audio-only form, but then I say that literally every episode, and hundreds of you see
losing out on the John Madden, but still.
Yeah, exactly. But hopefully we've audio. I mean, we didn't do a tremendous job of audio describing everything, but we got audibly excitable about them, and hopefully that paints a picture.
Absolutely.
The usual plugs for me: patreon.com/GarethDennis for Patreon. It's where all the hogs live. Every podcast has a Patreon. That's just how this works. Thankfully, I don't have to live off mine, because I would very rapidly starve if I did. But that's not to say thank you to all of you who do support me via Patreon. PayPal.me/GarethDennis to throw abuse and loose change at me. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the Discord server, where all of the chat that's been happening. Hello, everyone in the chat that we can't see because this isn't a live episode, but you'll be doing it anyway. Hi, everyone in the chat. That continues in the Discord server. The merchandise is down at the moment. Hello to Masket, if you're out there.
Fix it.
Say hi. Fix it, please. Fix it. Because I need to sell people. I need to continue my tirade of buying every MP a "we need to abolish the Treasury" mug.
Plus you could be the sole authorized distributor for the network Southeast Clock.
Yes, absolutely. And not get a cease and desist from TFL.
That's right.
Alice, you do shows.
I do so many shows. I do so many things. I do a podcast about engineering disasters called A Leisure Problem. I do a show about James Bond movies that is now in its second season and is not about James Bond movies, called Kill James Bond. And I do a show about technology called Trash Future. All three of those have Patreons. So if you want to, you can achieve a sort of rare triple crown of paying me 3 times for 3 different products.
It not only is possible, it is encouraged.
That's right. I'm also on Twitter at Alice Avazandum. And yeah, I think that's everything I do.
I think the overlap in audience between your empire, the empire within which you exist, and Little Rail Natter in the corner. I think there's the Venn diagram is that there's a small circle and then there's a large circle that envelops it. So I think most people will already kind of, but for those who don't,
on the off chance,
on the off chance, for those who you don't know who Alice is, you can find out more about Alice by listening to these 3. Kill James Bond is excellent, by the way. Everyone should go, if you haven't. I'm imagining like Kill James Bond might be the one that people who listen to this haven't listened to because it's maybe a little further outside of the. It's not the. Go and listen to it. It's tremendous fun.
Thanks so much.
It's very, very good. I did the thing where I binged it in a very short space of time. And then, I did, but what I did was, cleverly, Dina and I decided to start watching the James Bond films in order and sequentially.
Perfect. That's what you want to do. Make a project of it.
Yes.
Start watching Dr. No and then listen along.
So we binged the films, and then I would, on my way to work the day after, would listen to KJB on the way to work and back, and then would have the episode done, and then I'd watch the next one, and it was always very funny because it was fresh in my mind, which meant that all the references landed wonderfully. It was good.
Oh, fantastic.
Strong recommend to all of these things.
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure. Next week is going to be live again. This is next week in the time sphere that Alice and I are not existing in yet, but will do eventually. Episode 124. I just thought 123 is also the number that you dial if you wanted the talking clock, wasn't it?
Oh, God, yeah.
Nice. Anyway, all the 1, 2, 3 references.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice V2000 there.
Yes, exactly. We are. Yeah, we're going to be talking about trains in the Scandinavs, Scandinavia. Dominic Hind is going to be joining us, and we're going to talk about railways and modernity next week. That'll be a live one with Dominic joining us. That should be fun. Let's go back to how do I normally end this thing? Well, I'd go here and then I go, Alice. Yeah, an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Believe me.
I just it's so much fun. I will post on Twitter whether there are any watches referenced in the corporate identity manual. It's above my head. And I will see all of you who are watching next week.
Bye.
It only remains for us to say cheerio, bye, bye.